Thank you for joining Wars of the Rosies as we continue with Part 8, Jakob Boehme, From Orders of Universal Reformation by Manly P. Hall. Jakob Boehme. There has been considerable controversy about the place of Jakob Boehme, 1575 through 1624, in the adept tradition. There is a report that he was baptized into the Rosicrucian Society in 1612, but no evidence meaningful to the impartial scholar has been advanced in proof of this account. It appears more likely, from the writings of the mystic and such biographical material as has been regarded as authentic, that Boehme was self-taught and should be included among those who were illuminated and inspired by personal piety and devotion to spiritual convictions. When young Jakob was still apprenticed to a shoemaker, an old man came into the shop to purchase a pair of boots. Having secured footgear to his liking, the stranger left the store and, stopping a short distance away, called out in a loud voice, "Jakob, Jakob, come forth." Boehme, astonished and frightened, ran out to him. The strange man turned his eyes upon the youth. They were deep, mysterious eyes, seemingly filled with the light of the Holy Spirit. He took Boehme's hand and saying, "Jakob, thou art little, but shalt be great and become another man, such an one as at whom the world shall wonder. Therefore, be pious, fear God, and reverence his word. Read delightfully the Holy Scriptures, wherein ye have comfort and instruction." Some enthusiasts have insisted that the mysterious stranger was a Rosicrucian adept, but as he was never seen on any other occasion and was entirely unknown to Jakob, such an opinion is definitely conjectural. We can only point out that parallel occurrences are reported in the lives of known adepts. Initiates of the Hermetic, cabalistic, and alchemical schools did travel incognito at that time, visiting disciples and assisting worthy aspirants. Even if the stranger were such an adept, it does not necessarily follow that Boehme was accepted formally into one of the authentic secret societies. Symbols of possible Rosicrucian interest occur in some editions of Boehme's writings published after his death. These, however, cannot be regarded as conclusive proof of his Rosicrucian affiliations, as he borrowed extensively from many systems of esoteric speculation in his search for terms, figures, and devices appropriate to the unfoldment of his own peculiar doctrine. None of his associates or early editions and translators made reference to his membership in any secret order, although such an intimation would have advanced Boehme's prestige to a marked degree. All efforts to identify him with mystical fraternities are of comparatively recent date. From Boehme's Mysterium Magnum, The Mystery of Christ, a cabalistic design including 2 examples of conventional rose form devices. Boehme's literary output consisted of about 20 works, long and short. All are bound together by a general pattern of doctrine. None of his larger writings were published during his lifetime, but many of his manuscripts were circulated privately among a small circle of enthusiastic followers. This circle never assumed the proportions or dimensions of a fraternity, and we cannot learn that he imposed any regulations or restrictions upon those wishing to study his writings. He requested discretion because of the antagonism of the local Lutheran clergy, and was reticent to permit his manuscripts to be long out of his own possession. He feared that they would aggravate his enemies, who resented a shoemaker having opinions on theological matters. Shortly before his death, Boehme prepared a key to his writings. This consisted of a table of principles intended to coordinate the terms which he used and the general scheme of his revelations. Even this table, however, was not sufficient to clarify for the layman the more recondite of his metaphysical speculations. Perhaps had he lived longer, he might have realized the need for a simple summary of his abstruse doctrines, but he died soon after completing his table of principles. Boehme was an outstanding example of the difficulties almost inevitable whenever a mystic attains a high degree of internal illumination, without an adequate foundation in the philosophical disciplines practiced by initiate philosophers. He had no way of organizing the revelations which flowed outward through his personality. He lacked even the words essential to the clear presentation of his ideas. He had no formal background with which to meet the bigotry and antagonism of the contemporary theologians. His devotion and integrity are beyond question, but he suffered numerous difficulties and misfortunes, and was forced to waste much precious time and energy defending himself and his principles from the attacks of small minds. The disciplines of the mystery schools were devised to bestow a degree of self-sufficiency, and the faculties of an invisible empire of initiates and their disciples were available to those who voluntarily associated themselves with the adept fraternities. It should not be supposed that the mystery schools were attempting to reserve knowledge for themselves or their members because of selfish motives. Experience has shown beyond any possible doubt that anyone desiring to serve and educate humanity must have at his disposal certain internal resources, which only discipline can render available. The work of the teacher is extremely difficult at best, and without proper guidance, disaster is almost inevitable. One must not only possess the internal knowledge and understanding, but must also have the discrimination to know what can be taught, who is teachable, and the proper time at which instruction can accomplish the greatest good. The undisciplined idealist is almost certain to develop a disastrous overenthusiasm, which destroys perception, creates or intensifies obstacles, and frustrates the reasonable ends of action. There is also the important element of coordinating effort. When the individual is aware of a large purpose and is uniting his efforts with others motivated by the same unselfish principles, there is greater accomplishment than is possible when the isolated enthusiast is guided only by his own benevolent but often impractical instincts. It is quite within the range of possibilities that the uninitiated mystic will unintentionally come into conflict with the program of the very teachers whose work he desires to advance. He has no way of knowing the direction in which the great schools are operating unless he is, at least to a degree, a party to their program. Some may feel that the initiate teachers themselves should inform the sincere individual, share their program with him, and accept him into their company without the disciplines and obligations which are normally required. Unfortunately, this is not possible, for the enlargement of consciousness cannot be transformed, but must be obtained by the actual participation in the rules and regulations of the sanctuary. The esoteric doctrines are not imposed upon the disciple, but are released through him as he refines his consciousness according to the laws of the secret schools. There is only one proper door to the sheepfold, because that door is actually the science of human regeneration, until the true seeker chooses, from the realization of his own insufficiency, to enter by this door and voluntarily to accept the guidance of the great school. It is powerless as an institution to protect him or advance his cause. Occasionally, through the natural integrity of personality and motives, a mystic, like Boehme, attains to a participation in those divine laws, normally beyond the comprehension of the profane. Socrates was another outstanding example of a self-taught teacher. The internal wisdom of the man is a magnificent testimony to the potential human achievement, and their dedication to the unselfish service of their fellow creatures is admirable. Socrates refused initiation because he felt that it might limit his ability to communicate his ideas to others. He did not wish to have his lips sealed by an oath. His very sincerity, however, was a liability rather than an asset. it remained for his disciple, Plato, an initiate bound by the obligations of the mysteries, to perpetuate the wisdom of his uninitiated master. Boehme's mystical Christianity attracted the attention of Johann Georg Jekyll, 1638 through 1710, whom Madame Blavatsky, well qualified to speak on these matters, refers to as an initiate and Rosicrucian. It is not possible to study the life of Jekyll and the description of his illumination, which appears in Theosophiae Practica, Volume 7, without realizing that he is delivering a veiled account of his acceptance into the esoteric school. Thus, Jekyll becomes a Plato to the German Socrates, and under his supervision the extraordinary diagrams and illustrations were added, and Boehme's mystical revelation was incorporated into the adept tradition. Inevitably, the uninitiated illuminate is drawn towards the porch of the temple. As his vision enlarges and his understanding deepens, his human doubts about the wisdom of the esoteric descent are dispelled by the experiences of his consciousness. He comes to realize that an eternal plan is operating in the world, and that the greatest good to the greatest number is attained by gentle submission to the rules and regulations of those sacred institutions which have labored unselfishly for the good of man for thousands of years. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Rosies. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.